Shall we get on with the review of the suit? Put your biceps down, Josh.
Sorry, I just get into the mood. I'm sorry. One of us has to have a good physique here, and Bobby.
Shut up!
Yeah, Bobby, we need to cut your fingers off already. Okay, you're not funny. Every 30 seconds, you're doing that. Okay, go ahead, Derek.
This is some of the best work we've ever done.
Absolutely.
So, with the series breakdown, I'm not going to get into the plot and all the details and little, tidbits that we can obviously go through, because I'm assuming most folks who watch this have probably seen all these movies. If you have any hate mail about that, send it over to Josh, because I don't want to hear it. All right. So why don't we get on? Best place to start is at the first order of business, which is the original Rocky film. This one came out December 3rd, 1976. That is before I am even born. I'm not going to age myself too much there.
Yeah.
It was, of course, we talked about, written by Sylvester Stallone, but the director for this film was John Avildsen. I can't pronounce that name. I tried doing it earlier, too. You might not think you're familiar with him. Believe it or not, you probably are. And you guys are, too. He directed both Karate Kid Part 1 and 2, as well as Lean on Me. They used to call him Crazy Joe. Now they call him Batman. In this film, you guys want to take a guess at what the budget was for this?
Ooh.
Oh my God! Back then?
Yeah.
Oh jeez, I'm afraid to pick a number.
I'm going to say that it was less than $1 million.
Bob's right, $860,000.
Wow.
And the reason why I'm thinking that is because when you look at the film itself, everything is in practical sets. They didn't have to go out and I don't think they really had to build sets for this. Everything, I'm sure they found a freezer somewhere to film the scene where he's punching the meat. I'm sure they found a gym somewhere to do all the training sequences. So I'm sure they were able to save money that way. And then Stallone, he wasn't a big star at that time. So we already know that he made very little money to play in the movie itself. So that's why I figure it was less than $1 million.
Yep. But boy, did they make up for it at the box office. $225 million is what they took.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Did Stallone cast everybody, or did somebody else kind of go with Talia Shire and, Burton and all those guys and Burgess Meredith?
If I understand correctly, I think they did go through a casting agency, but I know Sly had a big hand in selecting who he wanted in the film.
Got it.
Yep. Got it. So those are some details there. Thoughts about the first film, gentlemen? Let's get into it.
It's amazing.
Go ahead, Bob.
The first film is amazing. Just from a story standpoint, this idea of this down in his luck boxer who everything is going wrong. I mean, he's got multiple jobs. He boxes, he's working as a loan shark, he's doing whatever, a collector for a loan shark, doing pretty much whatever he can to try to make ends meet, and he's got this lonely life, all he's got are these little turtles to keep him company. And yet he gets this title shot, and it's just like at the right time, everything seems to start going right for him. He ends up hooking up with Adrian, of course. He gets the title shot. He finds a manager to turn around and help him. It's just everything starts coming together. And all he needs at this point is just belief that he's not just some bum, that he's actually more than that. And that's what the whole fight is for. It's for him to prove to himself that he's something more than just the bum on the street. It's not even about winning. I mean, he even says, I can't win. But he's just trying to prove something to himself. And I think it's an amazing story. Well casted, great acting. Overall, great film.
To you, Josh.
I have one word for this movie: gritty. It was amazing. It just looked great. The way he trained was unbelievable. Like Bob said, it's a true underdog story. A guy who was trying to, work multiple jobs, was lonely, finally met the girl of his dreams, and then ended up getting a championship match with, at the time, the hottest boxer in the world. And the fact that he went like, what was it, Bob, 12 rounds or 15?
No, he went 15 because during that time, heavyweight championship matches went 15 rounds.
And people were like shocked by the end. I always, that thing we talk about, like what we remember, one of the famous scenes is at the very end when Rocky kind of tells Apollo, come on. And Apollo just like puts his head down, like how much more can this kid take?
You know what? One of the things, just real quick, Josh, to throw in, because you're mentioning he's telling him, come on. One of the things that even as all this amazing stuff is happening to Rocky, he just kind of keeps this simpleness about him. True. And I love that about him. Heck, even at the end of the fight, when Adrian shows up, like he's not even concerned if he won the fight or not. You're hearing the ring announcer saying that it's a split decision and announcing what the judges said, and he's not even paying attention to that. He's just screaming for Adrian. And then when she comes in, what's he concerned about? Where's your hat?
Yeah.
He's just very simple. And I love that about the character. He's just an extremely lovable character.
It was great. It's like a great contrast between him and Apollo. Like you just said, Rocky was more concerned about Adrian and her hat. Apollo was upset. He was upset that this bum went toe-to-toe with him for 15 rounds, and Apollo won by split decision.
But we don't really find that out until we get to the second one, how upset he was. And because remember, we don't really know when the film came out, I don't think this wasn't intended to be a franchise. I don't think.
Oh, really?
No, this wasn't intended to be a franchise.
No.
They only got a sequel because it was so successful. And I mean, we can get into that when we go into Rocky 2, but okay. Apollo wasn't taking the fight seriously in the first film. I mean, you have that scene where he's Rocky's punching, the meat, and Duke is watching it on television. And he's like, hey, champ, you need to come over and check out this guy you're going to fight on TV. It looks like he means business. Yeah. I mean business too. Hey, you got my coffee?
Yeah.
That was Apollo's mentality in that first fight.
He didn't look at it as a fight. He looked at it as a publicity stunt.
Well, that's what it was. I mean, remember, he turns around and he even says that in order to, since they don't have a top contender available, because I don't know if you remember or not, but the whole reason why Rocky got this title shot was because Apollo had a title fight already lined up. The top contender broke a bone in his hand, I believe. Right.
Yep.
And because of that, he wasn't able to fight. And so Apollo even turns around and says, okay, so if we're going to still have a fight, then what we're going to need is a gimmick. And so that was the whole point. It was a publicity stunt.
Couple of thoughts
I had. What do you think?
The thoughts I had about the first film. It's actually, it ties back to what Bob was saying. It's pretty incredible how this runs and feels like an indie movie, because in a lot of ways it was.
Yeah.
To Bob's point, they didn't need a lot of sets to make this happen. They didn't need a serious cast to make this happen. They didn't need all the things that really make a big budget movie. They did keep it simple. And Rocky was perfectly played by Sly. What I loved about Sly was that for as hard and rough as his life is, he always seems to keep his head up. He always seems to have a good attitude. He just doesn't ever stay that unpositive. And for a guy that may not be the brightest bulb in the drawer, or, maybe the poorest guy out there, not riches by any means, he just comes off as lovable, which is a big part of why you get behind him. And combine that with the rags to riches story that you guys are talking about, it really does make it the perfect origin story. I can't say it's my favorite out of all the movies, but it is absolutely incredible if you're looking for a great point to start. If you're going to start watching these movies, for those that haven't watched these, start with the first. Don't jump around. Go right to the beginning.
And I agree with you about the favorite. I agree with you that.
Yeah, we can get into best and favorite here in a little bit.
Yeah.
Something that you just said, you're talking about how lovable he is and he's not the richest, despite the fact that he doesn't have all the breaks, you watch him throughout the film and he's turning around trying to help people.
Yes.
still.
Mhm.
Like there's the whole scene with him and little Marie where he's walking her home and trying to give her life lessons about trying to avoid the wrong type of people. You hang out with good people, or smart people, you get smart friends, you know. And he's trying to teach her, and he's telling her, "Oh, don't be smoking; it'll rot your teeth." Maybe I like rotten teeth. Oh, you know. So here he is down in his luck, and yet he takes the time to do something like that.
Yeah.
He, like you
Totally
said, he's an
agree.
extremely lovable character. He's just the way he views people, and he wants to help people out and do things. And like I said earlier, he's just very simple. The things that kind of bother him, they don't seem to bother anybody else. And the things that bother everybody else, they don't bother him.
Yeah.
It's little
Right.
things that kind of bother him, like a simple scene earlier in the film where he loses his locker, and he points out several times to Mick, "Hey, Mick, I ain't got no locker now." Like, you know, and that's the type of thing that bothers him. You know, it's something like
Yeah.
that bothered him.
Same with
And-
Adrian's hat. Multiple times.
And ultimately it goes into this whole storyline that, you know, he was trying to he had been trying to reach out to Mick for years. He turns around and tells Mick, you know, I came to you I think he said 6 years ago, I needed your help. You didn't care. And he's like, well, why didn't you just ask me? And he's like, I asked you and you never heard nothing. And it's just because of Rocky's simplicity. He doesn't know how to just come out and just ask for help, but not in a way that Mickey really understood it. And because he's just so simple. He's an interesting character, very well written.
He doesn't want to bother people.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
that's probably the best way to describe it. He doesn't want to bother anybody.
Yeah.
And when you finally see him and Mick come together in this film, the two of them actually meet each other. You know, you've got Mick at one point saying, "I've got knowledge and I got experience," and he says, I'm 76 years old, and it's Mick's way of kind of, I've got this knowledge and everything, I want to pass it on. And Rocky is this person who needs to receive all of this, and everything, like I said, just comes together perfectly for him at the right time.
Did Mick ever train a world champion before Rocky? Was he a manager of a world champ, or do we not know that?
No.
Okay.
No.
You kind of get the hint that this or the idea that this was a break, not just for Rocky, but it's a break for Mick too.
Yeah.
Mm.
Half of the beauty of the film is the fact that he pulls the people who he's tied himself to, he lifts them up with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Adrian
great. Yeah.
gets lifted up, Mick gets lifted up,
Paulie
gets lifted up.
Paulie.
Yep. It's very, very well done. And can't say enough good things about it. Anything else to say about the first one, guys? Cover the turf?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, you know what they say, gents. The money is in the sequel. You're going to want to make some money during the rematch. So that's what we get to in number 2. This one came out June 15th, 1979. The first two before I'm even born. This one was written and directed by Sly himself, which has got to be a chore and a challenge. Considering how much he had to get through in this one. But things get very real in this film. They get much more dramatic. Rocky literally gets life thrown at him in this movie. Everything from, you know, about to be a dad to his wife taking in the fact that he broke a promise, to Apollo Creed still yelling at him, asking for a rematch and wanting the fight to really prove how Apollo is the champ. There's a lot going on in this film, but it is very well done. The budget on this one, it was under $1 million last time. This one, they kicked it up a bit, $7 million.
Wow.
Yep. And it took in at the box office $200.1 million. It was the second highest.
You got to keep in mind back then they didn't have inflation the way that they did. Ticket prices were a lot less, and so, you know,
It's a lot of money.
$200 worth of ticket buys were a lot different than they are now.
It was the second highest grossing film of 1979.
What was
That's
the
right.
first?
I
Do we
don't
know?
recall. I think it might have been Close Encounters, the third kind.
Really?
I think it might have been that. I could be dead wrong.
Okay.
Someone will correct me, I'm sure. Or I'll correct myself one way or the other. And I'll get myself in the comments there. I stand corrected, folks, if I am wrong.
Yeah, you can correct yourself. I'm not going to look it up.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Me either.
No need to waste time.
No.
Gents, number 2. Break it down for me.
Go ahead, Josh.
So number 2 was interesting. Is it my favorite? No, but there are parts of it that I really loved, and parts of it I was like, okay. I mean, Derek, you kind of went through some of the stuff. One of the things was there was always this notion with him and Adrian that, okay, I'm going to do this fight and retire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then she's like, well, why don't you do something else? And then we find out he can't read,
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big hit to his confidence.
That's the other one, the detached retina.
I'm going to be doing commercials. No problem.
And anyway, and then you see Apollo in this movie, who is totally different though than what he was in the first one. I mean, he's as serious as can be. He's got, no pun intended, the eye of the tiger.
Can I make one
go for it.
statement about this one?
Put your hand down. Just turn around and say it.
Okay, I'll acknowledge the tribal chief first, and then I'll go.
Just turn around and say it. Just turn around, please.
So maybe one of the best scenes in all of the movies is the scene when Duke gets real with Apollo and says, I watched you beat that man down like you have never beaten a man before. And he kept coming.
Yeah.
And that's when Apollo has to get very real with himself, what he's up against.
Yeah, it was. I did love my favorite part. I think we both talked about this, about your favorite parts in movies that you can watch over and over again. It's when after the baby is born, and he goes in, and Adrian was in a coma, right?
Yeah.
And he sits down with her, and she goes, there's just one thing I want you to do. And he's like, what? And she's like, come here. And he's like, what? And she goes, win. And Mickey goes crazy.
What are you waiting for?
I'm getting chills. And then you have that awesome training montage, where he just is, going full throttle with it. He's got his confidence back. And then you had the fight, which, the fight was amazing. That ending when they both knock each other out, and you've got the slow count, the 1, 2, and then at the very end, Rocky gets up. So that was very cool. It's not my favorite, but I still thought it was a very good movie, very good sequel. Hey, Mr. Tiger, I'm getting married.
And to you, Bob.
I think Rocky 2 is a very underrated sequel. A lot of people, for whatever reason, they have it a lot lower on their list, and I think it's extremely underrated. I think it's solid throughout. It has a lot of interesting ideas in it. For one, you've got the idea of Rocky having to deal with success for the very first time. And he's got money for the very first time. Yeah. And you see him spending money like he had money for the very first time. Yeah. And because in his mind, oh, well, I'm going to be doing commercials and no problem, and then heck, he was even thinking of investing in condominiums. Condominiums, right. I never use them. He says. Anyway, no, so he wasn't thinking of it, but they asked him if they wanted to invest it. My point is that he's having to deal with all this stuff, and you see him going out and buying a car that he doesn't know how to drive.
Yep.
He goes out and he buys these watches, he buys these coats and this jacket, and he buys all this stuff. He goes and gets us this house that he doesn't even listen to anything that they're saying about, oh, I think this is a great house, and he doesn't even listen to Adrian, and she's like, well, the bank can give us this type of loan, or what? It don't matter. This is just details. I think we should take the house right now, and because he's just excited for the fact that he's got all this, and then he finds out, of course, Adrian's pregnant and all that. So he's got all this. Every life, like you said, is rushing at him, and for the first time, he's got a little success, and then all of a sudden it starts to get taken away from him because now he's running out of money. And back to the reality is that I don't really have the skills to go out and do some of the things that I got to do. And so he's having to struggle with the fact that he's a fighter.
Yeah.
But he made this promise to Adrian, and he also he may not have the tools that he used to have to be able to do this. Heck, there's that amazing scene where he's talking to Mickey, and Mickey just turns around and slaps him in the face, and it catches Rock off guard, and Mickey's like, "You didn't even see that coming," and that was from a broken down pug like me.
Yeah,
and it's a realization that, heck, maybe I can't do this anymore. And so you see Rocky struggling with all that. And of course, you wouldn't have had the sequel unless he's going to fight Apollo again. So as the plot goes on, of course, he's going to fight Apollo. And I just think that it's well done. And the whole training sequence leading up to it, like you were saying, Josh, you get those fun training montages. But I actually think the sequences before all that are a lot more interesting from a character standpoint. Because he's struggling again with the fact that he made this promise to Adrian, and you see him just struggling during his training. Like he can't even catch a little chicken. You know,
Yeah.
you got Mickey, I want you to chase this little chicken, and he's out like, whoa, take a taste of chicken. It's embarrassing, and so it's just, I think it's a very underrated sequel. It captures a lot of human traits and aspects to it. I just love what it does. And then, of course, you brought up Apollo and how he's taking everything seriously. And I like watching that contrast that you see Apollo just going to town on these sparring partners, beating the snot out of them. And yet Rocky can't get his head in the right place because of the promise he made to Adrian. And obviously
I won, but I didn't beat him.
Yeah. Obviously, he gets that together, and then you've got the whole fight and everything like that. And so it ends in a great place. But I just like seeing Rocky having to overcome some of those things.
This movie was one I actually got to catch when my oldest was a baby in those middle of the night episodes. And after we got him back down to bed, start flipping the channels, and Rocky 2 was on. There are some elements about this movie that start to really hit hard when you become a dad. Things get very real, as we talked about. When don't want turns into can't have, that's a very, very serious thing. And that's what really kind of ends up happening to Rocky in the movie until the end, because all he knows how to do is fight. And if he can't do that anymore, what does life look like for him? And we come to see little pieces of what that does look like. And finally, he is given the gift by the people he lifted up the first time. He's given the gift of faith from them to go win again. And that's what really hits you. That's what starts to tug on the heartstrings. And I'm with you, Bob. It's incredibly underrated. Go back and watch it if you have a chance, because it'll get to you. There's
real quick,
in this movie that are
quick, Derek, before we move on to the next one, there was just another thing that I wanted to point out. What I like is the contrast from the first film to the second film. During a lot of the training sequences, nobody cares who Rocky is. Nobody knows who he is. You see him running on the streets and nothing. And yeah, it's a little bit cheesy, but in the second one, you see him running with all those kids and everything. And yeah, like I said, it's cheesy, but it showcases the difference in how people are viewing him, because now people have connected to this fighter and his story, and you see everybody's behind him now. And I thought that was a great contrast to see in the two films. Yeah, was it cheesy? Him running around and jumping around with all the kids and everything, but it's fun.
But it was fun. It's awesome.
Yes, it's an absolutely fun sequence to watch. And like I said, it really showcases the difference and how far this character has come by this point, as far as he, use a term from the other Rock, he is the people's champ at this point.
By the way, quick question: the chicken scene was the second movie, right? Was
Yeah.
it the first one?
No.
Okay.
No, that was the second one.
You look. He's like, you look like a goyle out there. What's the matter with
Oh,
you?
yeah.
You feel like a Kentucky Fried Idiot.
Isn't this robe nice? It's perfect.
That's real cute. I like it.
Oh god, that's funny.
So again, obviously we like the first, but the second, don't that one either, folks. On to the next.
Absolutely.
Okay, so for the next, I got to do this. Thunderlips is here, brother.
Oh, that's
I seen
funny.
wrestlers that was bigger than dinosaurs. You ever fight a dinosaur, kid? I can do a variety of damage.
Oh my god.
Yes, folks, number 3. Okay, this one came out May 28th, 1982, Memorial Day weekend.
I just looked it
Also-
up actually.
Yep, written and directed by Sly again.
Okay.
So this is his second shot at doing, pretty much triple duty with writing, directing, and acting. Budget for this one jumped up a little bit, $17 million. Taking in at the box office, $270 million.
That shocked me. I
Yep.
cannot believe
Well,
it
you got to
made
keep
that
in
much.
mind, by this point, Sly is an action star at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's deep in other stuff. That's true.
Yeah, so yeah, he's actually beginning to become a box office draw at this
What
point.
had come out? Had Rambo come out yet?
Rambo
I need to go
came
back
out,
and-
I think,
Like,
81.
what was-
I think the first Rambo came out in
Okay.
1981. I think.
Really?
Yeah, it came out very early 80s.
I think Bob's looking it up.
Yeah,
think
let me
Bob
look
is,
at- let me look up what
I
it is.
think because I thought later for some reason for Rambo.
Well, maybe I don't know.
But I
feel
don't know.
like it
Maybe
was
Derek's
seriously
right.
early.
Okay, so some of the movies that he would have had already come out by that point. Yes, he would have had First Blood that came out in that actually came out the same year as Rocky 3.
Oh,
But
wow.
he had a
Oh,
film
good
called
year.
Nighthawks come out, a film
Okay.
called Escape to Victory, film called Fist, Paradise Alley. So
I've
he's
not
already
seen.
become. Plus, he had the 2 Rocky films under his belt. So he's already beginning to become recognized
Big
as
star.
a big star. And then, of course, you can't forget the big film that he did the year after that, Rhinestone.
Yes. None of those were over the top, though.
That is
That's
true.
some of his finest work.
Over the top. How about Oscar?
That-
Well, hey, I
You
don't.
look
I
on
will go to.
Oscar-
I will die on the hill that Oscar is actually a good movie. I like
You're the
Oscar.
only one. You're the only one I think
No,
ever has said
I
that.
think it's hilarious. I'm not saying it's a great. Okay, it's not a great movie, but it's a fun, entertaining.
it's fun
movie.
for what it is.
Yes, and a lot of people don't realize Oscar was a stage play, and so the film runs very much like a stage play.
I like Stopper, My Mom Will Shoot. That's my cheesy Stallone movie.
Oh God!
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right, back to
All
Rocky
right, go
IV.
ahead, Derek.
Alright.
Go ahead.
Well, anyway, that box office draw, that was the highest, obviously, in franchise history at the time. And it was the fourth highest grossing film domestically of that year. So, and another interesting fact, it was the second highest grossing film internationally.
Hmm.
So that means worldwide made some money. So this one gets, shall we say, a little animated. I'm not going to call it a cartoon. I don't think it needs to go that far. But things get very, I guess the word is cheesy, but it's beautifully cheesy. It
It's
doesn't
an
get much better.
80s movie. That's
It's
what
an
it is.
It's an
It's an
80s
80s
movie.
movie. I think
Yes.
it found the right balance between being an 80s movie and being a Rocky movie because it's still got some of that heart and drama that you find in a Rocky movie, but it hasn't gone completely over the top and become a straight up action movie like the next film in the series. And we'll get to that when we get to Rocky 4, but it found the right balance.
That's a good way to put it. A one-off mention for a very important character in the film is, of course, Clubber Lang, which may be the best boxing name ever.
Yep.
Played by the one and only Mr. T, who pities the fool.
Oh, pit of the fool. Pit of the fool.
And it's
Look
funny
at that
because
Stuckerville statue. Give him guts. Told you I wasn't going away. Your shot not gonna be mine.
Oh man, that's
What's your
good.
prediction for the fight? Prediction? Mm.
So I had only known Mr. T as a good guy in my life. I had never
Yeah,
seen him as
same
a
here.
bad guy.
Same
So
here.
when I see him completely annihilating Rocky, I'm about to cry. Mr. T's not a
Yeah.
bad guy. He's friends with Hulk Hogan. How can he be beating up Rocky like this? And so that was shocking to me. Luckily, the champ comes back and gets his prize. But that was the one thing that really did stand out for me in this film was the fact that Mr. T as a bad guy was a bad dude. And the fact that Rocky loses and Clubber stands with the title, that we hadn't seen before, where Rocky got conquered. So that was a big piece of business. Overall, like Bob said, it's an 80s movie, but your thoughts. Turn to you.
I think it's a fun movie. And yet it has a lot of dramatic moments in it. You know, I mentioned that in Rocky 2 that for the first time Stallone actually had or not Stallone, but Rocky actually had a little bit of success and he had to kind of learn how to manage it. This film looks at what happens when you become complacent. And you've kind of seen that success for a while, and it becomes easy to be complacent and not still have that, get up and go out and get it attitude. And Mickey even refers to him that he's become civilized, and that was the worst thing that could ever happen to a fighter. And I think it has some pretty heavy hitting stuff. Of course, you've got Rocky losing his father figure when Mickey dies. You have him losing his title. Everything had built up to where he had all this success, and then it all came crashing down. And it's interesting to see how he picks himself back up. And of course, we know that comes from the most unlikely place, from his former rival.
Mm-hmm. He turns to Apollo, and yes, we do lose Mickey, unfortunately, in this one. But that's what also makes it very good. So
actually, what's interesting is because you say he turns to Apollo, but actually, Apollo was the one who reached out to him.
Yep.
Because Apollo wanted, in his mind, Apollo wanted an opportunity to kind of make things right for himself, because he never tried to win the title back or anything like that after he'd lost it. So he doesn't go after Mr. T. I think that's kind of why he has that secret fight at the end. Yep. In his mind, he needs to beat Rock. He doesn't need to beat Mr. T.
No.
And so he needs, maybe in his own little selfish way, he needs Rock to still be the champ. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't want legitimately to help Rocky, because I think he does. But I think he also wants Rock to make it right for himself. And then that way, when he has his little secret fight with him, in his mind, the world's right the way it should be.
Mm-hmm. That's a good take.
Well, I got to tell you guys, Bobby knows this. Derek, you probably know this. This is my favorite movie.
You should have saved that until later.
Rocky. I know. I'll say it again, but I thought this thing had everything.
See that, Derek? He ruins your setup.
Forget it. Wrap it now.
Can you guys let me talk?
No.
Can you guys let me talk? Good God. Good God.
Shut up!
Thank you.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Right on
Somebody cut Bobby's hands off. Anybody out there? My God. Jeez. Anyway, now I don't even know what I'm saying. Thank you, you guys. Are you happy?
Yes.
Are you happy?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, this is an F, okay? Good God. I give up.
Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
No, are you sure? Would you like me to wait for you to show 10 other dumb things? I
don't know. Derek seems to like it.
Well, Derek likes everything. Anything that insults me, Derek, you become best friends with. I just loved everything about this movie. I love the training montage. And it's funny because one thing that Bob said was that, he looked to Apollo, someone you wouldn't realize. There's one other thing, though. Adrian, really, when he was down in the dumps, she let him have it. And when he says, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. And she just, like, it's the first time where she was strong. And then all of a sudden, he's like, when did you get, what was it? When did you
When you
become
get to be so tough.
tough? And she's like, I'm married to a fighter. And then you have that scene on the beach with him and Apollo, and then him training harder than you've probably ever seen him train in a very different way. Swimming, and he takes Paulie and pulls him into the pool, and he's just got this new type of confidence. And then at the end for the final fight, when he just comes out and he starts hitting, you don't see that in the Rocky movies. It's kind of like a slow, measuring each other, testing each other out. And in this one, he went right after Clubber Lang. And it was just amazing because it was a tale of two fights. That first fight, like Derek said, Clubber beat the what out of him. Like, Rocky had, I like the word that Bob said, that Rocky was complacent, because he literally was like, oh, come on, Mick, let's do this one more fight. And he just thought it was going to be easy. He could ride a bicycle. He had the girl kiss him. He was just, taking pictures. And then he gets in with Clubber. And he just, not only, let me go back. He has the incident with Mickey. And now that's on his mind. And he's going against a beast. And Clubber just destroys him.
Josh, you mentioned that how good the montage is, and he's training harder than he ever had before. Part of that is because he had to learn a whole new style, and that's, I think, part of what makes the fight so exciting is the fact that it is a completely different Rocky from what we've seen before. He learned a whole different style because, in fact, his regular style is very much like Clubber's, and so he had to learn to be different, and that in a lot of ways made the fight more exciting.
How many rounds did that fight go?
3.
The one at the end?
3.
And then the one at the beginning was 3 as well?
2.
Wow. So yeah, I think my only negative of that whole movie was Mickey dying, because I love Mickey. But it was a great story arc from, him being so cocky and confident, but then getting blasted and not having Mickey anymore. And then Apollo coming in, and you thought, oh, he's going to, be good with Apollo. And he wasn't. He really was down in the dumps with Apollo. And then when Adrian comes in, and then all of a sudden it was like a light bulb went off, and he became a whole different fighter.
Mickey had to die, though. That's the thing. Because if Mickey doesn't die, the whole sequence with Apollo, it doesn't work.
No, it would never work. No.
Yeah, because everybody would have been like, well, why isn't he with Mickey? Why did he just dump Mickey and go to Apollo?
No,
you had to kind of have Mickey out of the picture, unfortunately.
Yeah, you had to go through a loss in order to have that game.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it was cheesy. There were some cheesy parts. The one with Hogan and stuff. Hey, can we get a Polaroid together? Yeah, sure.
Well, heck, even the final fight is a little cheesy as well. I mean, heck, he's sitting there grabbing on top of Clubber's head, going, grabbing on top of the mohawk, and whatnot. So yeah, even then, it's got some cheesy moments.
Love that movie.
And I'll say this: Clubber Lang, he's got some of the best one-liners or some of the best lines through the whole thing.
Come on, Bobby. You want to do
ready for another beating? You should have never came back. And then Apollo's like, just be cool. Hey boy. After I crucify him, you next. And then he's like, and then you see Apollo, he's like, just get out of my face, chump. And don't do the back of me, sucker. And this whole brawl before the fight, it's great.
And then Rocky goes, I thought you said to be cool. That was cool.
Yeah, that's
beat you like I did last time.
See, there's so many great parts to that movie.
There are.
He's great.
Yeah,
he's a great
it is. Clubber Lang is a reminder of what it's like if you're on top and
Yeah.
you've got everybody coming for you.
Yeah.
And that's
And Clubber's workout.
You can't take your eye off the game.
And you
There's
know,
always
during
going to be
Clubber's
somebody
workout.
bigger and stronger coming after you.
Right. And Clubber, the way Clubber worked out, while, you know, Rocky was just, you know, taking pictures and all that. And he
Yeah,
was
T
doing
was
sit-ups and the chin-ups and,
Mhm.
you know, fighting. And what I didn't really know was at the beginning, Bobby just told me this a couple of weeks ago, was about the handpicked opponents at the beginning, that they just basically were just said, okay, because, you know, Rock, for you to have that confidence and win. And that was it. He was never challenged.
Yeah, well, you know, and that's the thing is that Mickey didn't set up the fights or anything. In fact, Rock even's like, "Are they setups?" And he's like, "No, they weren't setups. It was good fighters. They weren't killers like this guy." You know, and that's the whole point, is that he was picking fighters that Rocky could beat, but would give him a legitimate fight. But they weren't going to be guys that were going to come out and possibly kill him. And that was the thing. He was Mickey in his mind was protecting Rock. And you see, again, Rocky's very complacent. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he won 10 matches in a row right after he had beaten Apollo. I mean, if you count the fight with Apollo, 11 matches in a row.
Oh,
He's the heavyweight champ of the world. He's got money. He's got his kid is growing up. He's living in a mansion now. Everything's going good for him. Heck, he's doing charity matches with Thunder Lips. He, you know, doing all this stuff. And yet, you know, there's somebody who's hungry, who's coming after him, like you said. Clubber Lang is that reminder that somebody's coming after you.
Right. There's always somebody hungrier than you.
Bigger, stronger, faster.
And you can't lose that or you can't lose that edge. You can't become complacent.
The hunter becomes the hunted. So, all right. Very cool.
All
Derek,
right.
did you go? Did you talk? You talked, right?
Oh yeah. No, I said what I had to say at the beginning of it. And can't say enough about the fact that it is an 80s movie, and what's not to love. Good on it. Thank you for everything. Clubber, this was your one and only appearance in the franchise history. So we appreciate you, if you couldn't tell. Courtesy of Bobo.